again, every, year or so, or 6 months, I always try to think of new ways to kind of frame data governance in very sort of accessible ways for people, because it can be a very big and daunting thing to do. My latest example that I think works really well is to think of the job of a research librarian, right? And this may seem sort of obvious, but either at a within a university or a corporation or some sort of scientific research group, but anyway, a research librarian. So this is and you might think, oh, that's pretty obvious what they do, but I like sort of breaking it down into 4 key areas. The first thing that librarians need to do is, or in libraries in general, is to do sort of a gathering task, right? So you have this building, this location, either online, virtual or physical, where you're acquiring this information, this content. So maybe you're subscribing to journals, you're getting newspapers, you're getting books dropped off, you're getting other kind of letters, whatever it might be that you're acquiring, depending on what type of institution you are. And this information, it's important to get in sort of a single place, like out from all of its little silos where it lives, and into a place where someone can come and get a broad understanding of all the information that's there. And this work, from the standpoint of the of the librarian, doesn't require a lot of effort. And there's people who are sort of doing, I guess, the collecting, but it's sort of like in the governance world, what we're talking about here is this is like the gathering of sort of the raw information about all the data that you have within your organization. So, and this is where we kind of equate this to the catalog type of activity. So, you've got all your different data systems and the data models that are in them, and we want to kind of inventory them and bring them in, bring the information about all the metadata into one centralized place, gather all that information, and also things about processes that you have, the reports that you've got, and ETL processes and things like that, and gather it and bring it in to the central knowledge-based repository. And this is an incredibly valuable thing, if nothing else, just to have it all in one place. I know sort of starting my career off as I started as sort of a developer working for a company, but then I was an independent consultant for a while, and I always felt that I could claim to be a reasonable programmer analyst, but the most valuable thing I brought to most of the projects was I knew how to look up and figure out, like, what is the data in this system, and what are the existing kind of store procedures and processes and things, like what's all the things that already exist that I can build on, right? I was also almost never building anything from scratch, and knowing how to go into the applications I was customizing or working with and to find out everything I needed there was incredibly valuable. And if you do nothing else but take some of that information that's trapped in your ERP systems and your warehouse and all that, and just figure out how to liberate that metadata so that someone doesn't have to have access to 5 different tools, or they don't have to have kind of a level of access that they shouldn't have just to see the metadata, and to get that metadata in one place is very valuable. But that's just sort of one step, and the next important thing is then the curation of this, right? So from a librarian standpoint, that's categorizing things and indexing them and labeling them and classifying them. So oh, this is a physics journal, and it's in this kind of area and category, and oh, there's articles in here about dark matter and quantum entanglement, and we're going to identify and classify those, and maybe put some sort of level or sophistication or date and contemporary, whatever kind of information that you might think is being done there. And that's incredibly valuable information for people who are going to come look at this and see it. So the first thing it's been gathered, but the curation makes it have a lot more value, so you can really get to what you need quicker. And so that's the same thing in the world of data governance, data intelligence. It's going on top of the data that you have, and either, one of the things is sort of assigning what we call policy attributes to them. So putting like security classifications or privacy codes or data access rules and retention, those types of things. But also more importantly, it's sort of defining the glossary area. So we've got something that's defined as an active employee or something, and we need to understand what that definition is and how does that connect to definitionally to the information that we have there. Also, taking the reports that you might have or ETL processes or data integration mappings that you pulled in and putting context on them, which is oftentimes missing. So, what's the purpose of this report? What are the definitions of the things on them functionally? Taking the reference data list, all that kind of stuff. Doing this curation above and beyond. So that's, in my opinion, the curation is sort of one of the hardest parts, right? And that's where you can have a really distributed set of people working at that. Your stewards and your subject matter experts being able to contribute, all the different types of research librarians that you have. One of the things that's interesting, we have sort of two versions of our product that you'll see. One is called the Knowledge Edition and one that's called the Enterprise Edition. And the Knowledge Edition is focused primarily on people who want business glossary and sort of documentation of reports and things in a very functional narrative way. It doesn't have the technical data components. And a lot of times we hear people who say, well, I just want to start with the glossary and then I'll worry about the technical stuff later because I kind of want to do this thing that is easier. And my response is always like, that's actually that's the hardest part. You're choosing to do the curation without, doing the easy part, which in the technical world, the gathering can be very simple, like being able to just kind of ingest a lot of this like raw content. And then that makes curating a little easier that you've got stuff to curate. But anyway, it's just an interesting point. The next thing to think about here is what we call researching. So having a library that's well curated is great, but if no one can access it and no one knows how to use it and look up the information, that's not so great. So you have to say the people who are coming in to interact with this content in the data governance world, maybe I need to build a report and that report includes something about my COVID cohorts and I need to know what that means and where that lives and I need to understand what's in what data exists in this data system in order to do this. Or there's someone reported a data quality issue, I need to track that and research it and figure out what's going on and create rules. And what's the way that you sort of interact with this content and find what you need and have access to it. So if you think of a system like the cookbook as the library, as this central repository, what are your points of entry for requests or searching and all of that, and how do you best find the things and the interconnectedness between that and interact with the curation and the gathered data together. So that's really an important thing to do, and that's for both your consumers of the data, and people who are creating reports, or who are doing self-service reporting. It's not just something that you need for your IT or BI folks. Right, the last thing on here, which is something people don't always think about, which is really important, is this concept of support or supporting. So the best librarians will work with you to help you find things, right? So in an ideal world, you can go into a research library and everything is so well curated that you can find exactly what you need. But sometimes that's not the case. There might be a whole bunch of content that was gathered that's not yet curated, that just came in, or there's, you're not sure exactly what you want or whatever. And so as you're looking for things, if you're not able to find what you need, you can, interact with that librarian, and they can, help you by either, curating stuff or going out and finding other information or pulling in a subject matter expert that you need to do that, or, getting content from another library or whatever. And so that sort of customer service aspect of it. And as we go through and talk about all of the activities of data governance and all the content that you interact with, if you can think of this way, like, well, what's the customer service aspect of someone who is reporting a data quality issue, someone who is trying to build a report and needs a definition, someone who has requested a report and you need to have it defined and created, or those types of things, or someone who's looking at a report that someone wrote 6 years ago before you ever put in data governance, and is saying, I don't understand what this report is, and I need to know what's the process of documenting that report, that one report that someone needs at that point in time. And one thing I'll say about that, kind of a teaser for our best practice here, is that we typically don't recommend that you spend a whole lot of time going back and documenting everything you've ever done in the past, because it's just not worth the effort in lots of ways. You document key things, you curate those key things, but it's really important that you have a process that if someone does come in and say, like, I need to understand what this report does that was written 8 years ago, then you have a process to document that one thing quickly, right? To do quick customer service on that. And that's much more important than documenting 5,000 reports, hoping that you're going to get the one that they want. It's just not a very effective use. So here we go. This is how we sort of frame data governance.